Ray Dalio stated that by analyzing the cycles that have occurred over the past 500 years, similar to how a physician who treats a large number of patients notices patterns, one can see that there are also cause and effect relationships. Even more, he said, well, that's the same old story. You have a new world order. After a fight between the two sides, there is a new order at home. One side will win. Once that side wins and you're in charge, you know that war is a great way to even things out. And you've paid off all the debts, you usually start a time of peace and prosperity. No one wants to go back to war, and no one wants to fight with the leading power. This creates a cycle of rising living standards, which leads to prosperity. This is how it was during the Industrial Revolution. This is also how it was after World War II. That makes people's lives better. When these differences in wealth get bigger, it also makes opportunities different. For instance, people with more money have more power and can help their kids better. Ray Dalio shared that it's crucial to be aware of the phenomena and fully comprehend them. They are three things that are currently occurring to extremes and have not done so since the 1930s to 1945. The first is what's going on with money and credit when you get a zero interest rate, and the government needs buying power but can't tax it. So we have the production of a lot of debt that the central bank prints money and buys that debt to spend. And the last time that happened started in 2008. With interest rates at zero, they couldn't lower their interest rates, so they had to print a lot of debt and the government went in and bought it. We're coming to the end of a debt cycle, so this is a big thing because the government will now determine where the money comes from and who will get what. And then they'll print it, and it'll devalue money. How money flows is a big deal. The second one is wealth and political gaps that are causing great conflicts. Throughout history, the main things that everybody's always fought over are money and political power. So we have a situation where you have a large wealth gap and an economic downturn, particularly if you put a lot of debt at the same time. You fight, that's been throughout history, and it's reflected in the political gap. So the political gap is a classic political gap. Left and right. Capital is socialist. But how do you distribute it? How are you going to deal with that? That becomes the other. And how do you fight? So that's the second of the two. This political wealth gap is causing conflict and is coming at a time when we don't have much money because we don't have a good financial position. We are printing and putting it out and making up money. COVID situation after the hit was a perfect illustration. People and businesses often try to cover up drops in their income, which would be disastrous. If people did not get their checks, there would have been a revolution. So, those checks went out. And since the government didn't have real money, it made more debt. The Federal Reserve then printed the money, and the checks went out. This makes money less valuable and changes things. So, the third thing is when a big power rises to challenge a big power that is already there. So the rise of China to challenge the US in all of history. There have been world orders in which one country is the strongest. Then, in 1945, the United States took over as the most powerful country in the world. Then we are at a time when we have never been challenged by another power. In the same way, there was the Soviet Union, but it was always a small part of our economy. We now have to deal with China becoming a power. They have about the same power and are going faster, which makes a difference. So, those three things had never happened to him before, but they had happened in history. This made him want to learn more about history and apply the lessons he learned from it. Can we be healthy and strong? And what do we do? To know, we have to be in it together. Like if we can row in the same direction, if we can have a thoughtful disagreement and get past that, we can be in it together, like the wealthy and the poor. In other words, is there respect for the system and mutual respect in trying to resolve these type of things? Or will they go to any lengths to win? Because a constitution or law will only carry you so far. There has to be an element of respect for it. Say, suppose you have two people with equal opportunities. Let's look at the marshmallow test. If you take a kid, you can ask her if she wants to have one marshmallow now, or she could have two marshmallows in 15 minutes if you don't eat the first one. Once you realize that deferred gratification will improve you and start to count how many days, weeks, months, or years you can live if you don't have money come in, you start to focus on that. That's the first step, like marshmallow testing. So you want to save, and you got to start there. Then if you do that, you're necessarily going to save in what? And then you'll start to get exposure to how these things are different and start to care well. Then you start to learn. And that's what makes the difference. The next thing that will inevitably come at you is, where do I put it? And then you get your choices. And then you experience it. And you learn to think. First, calculate how many days, weeks, months, or years you can live on your saving. Because when you do that, you'll gain security. Look at how much you're spending and then say, how much do I need? And whatever that number is, you will need more than that. Because it may go down rather than go up. Then you start to think about the things most essential for you to do. And then you start with your business or residence with a symbiotic relationship that you know well. So when you're enjoying and controlling it and it's yours, that's pretty good. If they keep mortgage tax reductions, it might also have some benefits. But that's not a black and white answer. So you could take a short principle and say, is it better to rent or buy? In other words, how much do you have that's liquid? How much do you have that's not liquid? And you start to get those things right pretty soon. You're getting yourself in good shape. And then you also have some experiences and go beyond that. So you start to know what's a stock and a bond. And then you will learn through experiences. Ray Dalio learned from what he went through. He began when he was 12. He used to play golf and he put the money he made from it in the stock market. He took the money he made caddying and bought shares in the only company he had ever heard of that were selling for less than $5 each. He was stupid to think that if he bought more, the price would go up and he would make more money. It was the only company that was about to go bankrupt. But another company bought it and it tripled. He thought this was an easy game, and he liked it because it was easy money. So he learned through experiments, which is how you learn. You'll have a good life if you earn $100 and spend $95. He knows so many people who don't make much but are there. Because if you start to think about what it costs you to live in terms of the basics, he thinks most people can get themselves in a position where they're net positive. So if you can be net positive and do that, you know that's number one. Second is knowing what you do next in terms of what you need and what you are best at, and then avoiding the following mistake. Ray Dalio said that the most common mistake people make when investing is to think that a good investment is one that did well. People are relatively more expensive, and things are often more expensive in markets that did well. And everyone, including the smart money, is always comparing and competing with them. So he would also say that diversification is important, because he learned that, first of all, investments compete. And it's not easy to tell which one is better, because if it were, life would be easy. Everyone has a lot of money, and this is a game where everyone wants to win. It is hard to say which one is better or worse. You could do all kinds of tests with experts and find out that they can tell the difference. But you cannot tell if the worst ones will turn out to be better. So, you understand that even choosing the best ones is difficult. And particularly if you're naive, like we spend hundreds of millions of dollars each year on research to try to give us an edge. Now you've got to compete with us, so competing in the markets is more complicated than competing in the Olympics. But more people try harder to do that. So it's a zero-sum game. But diversification will reduce your risk without reducing your return. That's critical. What are your thoughts about what Ray Dalio shared here? After listening to what he just said here, please comment down some of your ideas you got there. Thank you very much. We are looking forward to seeing your comments.